The cell fell quiet in the seconds before dawn, the kind of quiet that makes a prison hold its breath. Metal hummed through Alcatraz that night, the low vibration of pipes, the distant slap of waves against concrete, the echo of a place designed to erase hope. For inmates, this island wasn't just a prison, it was a verdict. No parole, no second chances, no illusions. Alcatraz didn't rehabilitate. It broke routines until men broke themselves. Frank Morris understood that better than anyone. Brilliant, withdrawn, and disciplined, he'd been moved to Alcatraz because no other federal prison could keep him contained. The Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, were quieter, tighter, bound by blood and shared time behind bars. Together, they lived inside a system built on certainty. Nobody escapes the rock. If stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe, because this one only gets darker. In June of 1962, certainty cracked. Guards made their rounds as usual, boots echoing down the tier, keys rattling with ritual boredom. Cells were checked. Faces were counted. Everything appeared normal. 3 men lay in their bunks beneath blankets, breathing slow, heads turned toward the wall. Another night survived. But what the guards saw wasn't what lay there. By the time morning counts began, the prison was already losing control of the story. When a guard reached into Frank Morris's cell to shake him awake, his fingers touched something wrong, too cold, too stiff. A dummy head rolled to the floor, painted with toothpaste, flesh tone from prison ingenuity, hair borrowed from the barber shop. Panic rippled through D-Block. The alarms screamed. Doors slammed. Guards sprinted. Warden Olin Blackwell was summoned. Cells were torn apart. Behind the sinks, vents had been carved wide enough for a man to slip through. Inside the walls, tools made from spoons lay discarded, silent witnesses to months of planning hidden in plain sight. Above the cell house, a trail continued. A homemade raft, stitched from stolen raincoats, was gone. The prison knew exactly where it should have been. And it wasn't there. Alcatraz had always sold one truth to the public: escape was impossible. The bay was too cold. The currents too violent. Survival time measured in minutes, not miles. That belief was the prison's final lock. Within hours, officials began shaping the narrative. Search teams combed the water. Debris surfaced days later, scraps of raincoat material, a paddle fragment, but no bodies. No blood. No proof. Only absence. By nightfall, the rock stood silent again, but its reputation had cracked. Somewhere beyond the cell house walls, the water moved on, carrying a question no one on Alcatraz wanted to ask out loud. What if they didn't drown? And if they didn't, where did they go? In the days after the escape, Alcatraz became a place of quiet suspicion. Officially, the men were presumed dead. Unofficially, no one could explain how 3 bodies vanished without a trace in one of the most monitored stretches of water in America. Behind closed doors, investigators argued with the tides. The FBI reconstructed the escape with clinical precision: wind speed, water temperature, current direction. Their conclusion depended on one fragile assumption: that the men entered the bay at the worst possible moment. But when independent analysts later ran the same data, a different outcome emerged. Enter the water at the right minute, and the current didn't drag you out to sea. It carried you north, toward land. That detail was quietly filed away. Inside the prison system, pressure mounted to contain the damage. Alcatraz wasn't just a facility, it was a symbol. If Morris and the Anglins survived, the myth collapsed. Guards were questioned. Inmates were interrogated. No one admitted to seeing anything. But rumors moved faster than reports. Then the whispers escaped the island. The Anglin family began receiving postcards, holiday greetings, short notes, always unsigned or marked only with familiar phrases. Handwriting matched. So did spelling quirks known only inside the family. Christmas cards arrived postmarked from South America. A mother received flowers every year, long after her sons were declared dead. Frank Morris's relatives heard different rumors. Quiet ones. Stories of a man who resurfaced under another name. Nothing concrete. Nothing provable. Just enough to keep doubt alive. For years, the government dismissed it all as grief-fueled fantasy. But doubt has a way of stacking evidence slowly. In 1975, a photograph surfaced. Taken in Brazil, it showed two men standing side by side, older but unmistakably familiar. Facial analysis decades later would note bone structure, ear shape, the spacing of the eyes. Not conclusive. Not dismissible either. A Brazilian farmer added another layer. He claimed two American brothers lived nearby for years, kept to themselves, paid in cash, spoke little, vanished without ceremony. No records. No trail. Back in the US, the case refused to stay buried. Every few years, another fragment surfaced, an old lead, a witness who waited too long to talk, a piece of debris that washed ashore far beyond where it should have. Each one chipped away at the certainty of drowning. By 2013, the pressure became impossible to ignore. The U.S. Marshals reopened the case, acknowledging something the FBI never had: under specific conditions, survival was possible. Not guaranteed, but plausible. Enough to change the language from "they drowned" to "we don't know." And with that shift came a harder question, one no report could answer. If Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers lived, how long did the system know it was wrong? By the time the U.S. Marshals took over the case, Alcatraz had already closed. The prison that once sold certainty now stood as a museum, its cells frozen in time. Tourists walked the tiers, staring into the same bunks where three men had vanished, never realizing the mystery wasn't locked in the past, it was still active. The investigation moved quietly. Officials revisited tide models with modern technology. They reviewed family statements once dismissed as emotional noise. They acknowledged what had always been inconvenient: no bodies were ever found. No physical proof of death. Only assumptions strong enough to protect a reputation. What emerged wasn't a clean answer, but a narrowing window of possibility. The Marshals concluded the escapees could have reached land. Not easily. Not safely. But alive. From there, the trail fractured. South America made sense: no extradition treaties at the time, remote regions, cash economies. A place where men with discipline and silence could disappear without erasing themselves completely. And that may be the most unsettling part. If Morris and the Anglins survived, they didn't chase attention. They didn't write books. They didn't test the system they'd beaten. They lived quietly, anonymously, as if freedom was something fragile, easily lost if spoken aloud. For Alcatraz, the consequence was permanent. The prison's myth never fully recovered. Yes, it was brutal. Yes, it was isolating. But it was no longer untouchable. The escape became a crack in the story America told itself about control, that there's always a system strong enough to account for every outcome. There isn't. In the end, the case remains officially unresolved. No death certificates were ever issued. No final confirmation was reached. The files remain open, waiting for proof that may never come. What's left is a psychological truth more disturbing than any verdict. Confinement depends on belief in walls, in water, in inevitability. The moment that belief fails, even the strongest prison becomes vulnerable. Whether Morris and the Anglins drowned or lived out their days under borrowed names, they forced the system to confront a possibility it never wanted to admit. That escape wasn't just physical. It was existential. And somewhere between the cold water of San Francisco Bay and a sunlit road in Brazil, the truth slipped away, untethered, unclaimed, and still out of reach. If you think this story was intense, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe for more true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.